It was the smell that woke me, a faint metallic tang, like blood mixed with rust seeping through the crack under my bedroom door. My eyes snapped open, heart pounding in the dark. The clock glowed 2:17 a.m., its red digits cutting through the silence of our Vermont home. I lay still, breath shallow, listening to the house breathe around me. The pines outside whispered against the window, but there was something else, a soft, deliberate scrape, like nails dragging across wood. She was out there again, wasn't she? My sister Isla, or whatever Isla had become. My name is Liam Carter, and I grew up in a town so small it barely clung to the map, nestled between mountains that swallowed sound and valleys that held secrets. Our house sat alone on a road with no name, just endless trees stretching into the dark. My mother, Heather, always dreamed of a daughter, a longing that carved a quiet resentment in her eyes when she looked at me. I was 3 when Isla arrived, a 4-year-old adopted from a foster home 2 towns over. No trauma, no scars. At least, that's what the papers said. But papers lie. Isla was never just a girl. The first time I saw her, she was sitting on the porch, my mother brushing her hair under the amber glow of dusk. Isla's eyes, pale and unblinking, locked onto mine. She didn't smile, didn't speak. Her stillness unnerved me, like a doll propped up to mimic life. "This is your sister," Mom said, her voice warm in a way I'd never heard. I nodded, unsure, watching Isla's fingers curl tightly around the hem of her yellow dress. At first, everything felt normal. We played in the yard, ate cereal at the kitchen table, shared a room with mismatched blankets. But Isla was different. I'd chase fireflies. She'd stare at them until they flickered out. I'd laugh at cartoons. She'd tilt her head, studying the screen like it held a secret. Her blinks were slow, deliberate, as if she was cataloging every detail of the world around her. She wasn't seeing, she was watching. Then the strangeness began. My toys started breaking, not in the clumsy way of a child, but with precision. My stuffed dog was sliced open, its stuffing arranged in a perfect circle on the floor like a ritual. My blocks were glued into twisted, unnatural shapes, defying gravity. Crayons melted into a black, waxy lump, reeking of burnt rubber. I found Isla in my room, once holding my baby blanket to her face, inhaling deeply, her eyes half closed. "What are you doing?" I asked, voice trembling. She didn't answer, just dropped the blanket and walked away. You know that feeling when you're alone, but not really. That's what Isla brought into our house. I'd wake at night, the air heavy, and see her silhouette in the hallway, motionless, a kitchen knife glinting in her hand. I told Mom, my voice small and desperate. "She's sleepwalking, honey," she said, brushing it off. "Some kids do that." But Dad wasn't so sure. One night, he stood guard outside my door, his face pale, when he later confessed he'd seen Isla there, again knife in hand, staring at my door like it was a puzzle she needed to solve. He never told Mom. "She'd send her back," he said years later. "And your mother couldn't bear that." By the time we were 8, Isla had changed. She was quieter, but her silence carried a weight, like a storm gathering strength. At breakfast, she'd whisper to herself, stirring her cereal until it dissolved into mush. She'd stare at corners, giggling softly, as if someone invisible shared her joke. I tried telling Mom again, but she waved me off. "She's creative, Liam. Let her be." Creative wasn't the word. Cruel was. At night, Isla invaded my space. My drawings vanished from the wall, reappearing crumpled in the trash. My socks ended up under my pillow, reeking of damp earth. My closet door, no matter how tightly I shut, it was always cracked open by morning, a sliver of darkness peering out. I started to feel her, even when she wasn't there. A chill on my neck, a shadow flickering just out of sight. Then came the night that broke everything. I woke to a sound wet, violent, like flesh tearing. My heart thundered as I crept to Ayla's room. Her door was ajar, the moonlight spilling across her figure. She sat cross-legged on the carpet, her fingernails clawing at her forearm. Blood smeared her pale skin, pooling on the floor. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, glowed red in the dim light. She was smiling, a grotesque curve that stretched too far. She didn't even flinch as she tore deeper. My scream shattered the silence. My parents rushed in, their faces pale with horror. The next morning, Isla was gone. "She's going away for a while," Mom said, her voice hollow. I didn't ask where. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I slept without fear. 3 years passed. The house felt lighter, the air cleaner. Mom spoke of Isla like she was at summer camp, her voice tinged with hope. Dad avoided the topic, his eyes shadowed by late nights and whiskey. Then, on my 11th birthday, I came home to balloons, a cake, and Ayla. She stood in the living room, taller, her hair longer, wearing a yellow dress that seemed too bright for her pale face. "Surprise," Mom sang, gripping Isla's hand. Dad said nothing, his jaw tight. Isla seemed different. Calmer, almost normal. She smiled, handed me a card with shaky handwriting. Happy birthday, Liam. I missed you. I'm better now. We played board games that night, her laughter soft but hollow. I wanted to believe her, to trust the girl who sat across from me. But her eyes were still watching. At 1:46 a.m., I woke to a burning pain in my arm. Isla stood beside my bed, a knife in her hand, her face empty. Blood dripped from my arm, the cut deep enough to expose muscle. The pain hit like a wave, but her smile was worse. It was too wide, too wrong, splitting her face like a mask. I want what's inside you, she whispered, her voice low and guttural. I screamed, and everything went black. I woke in a hospital, the antiseptic smell stinging my nose. Mom sobbed beside me, unable to speak. She's gone, she said, when I asked about Isla. Forever. We moved to a new town, a new school. No one spoke of Isla. My scars healed, but the nightmares didn't. She was there every night, her knife gleaming, her smile stretching. At 15, I thought I'd buried her. Isla was a myth, a ghost I'd outgrown. Then the letter arrived. No stamp, no return address, just a single sentence in jagged handwriting. You never let me finish. I screamed, my voice raw. Dad called it a prank, but Mom stopped eating for days. We changed locks, installed cameras. Nothing appeared on the footage. But I felt her. 2 years passed without another sign. I convinced myself it was over, that I'd imagined it. Then in college, I found a note in my dorm closet tucked inside my jacket. You still bleed the same. My blood ran cold. I hadn't told anyone about Isla, not my roommates, not my therapist. How did she know where I was? Campus police found no fingerprints, no evidence. A sick joke, they said. I knew better. I moved again. Then took a job at a quiet bookstore. One night, a woman in a yellow dress walked in, her face hidden in shadow. My body froze, every instinct screaming to run. When I approached, she was gone, but her dress lay folded on the floor, a note inside. You're all grown up now. I wonder what you look like inside. Sleep became impossible. I saw her in mirrors, in crowds, her reflection flickering where mine should have been. 2 nights ago, I woke to a stinging pain in my leg. 3 long scratches, not deep, but precise, carved into my skin. She's still out there. She's still watching. And I know with a certainty that chokes me that Isla isn't finished. She never will be. I lock my doors, check my windows, and sleep with a knife under my pillow. But every night, I feel her breath on my neck, her eyes in the dark. Isla's coming, and she wants what's inside me. Don't. The candles on my birthday cake flickered, casting shadows across the living room. But it was the smell of smoke that made my stomach twist. Laughter filled our Virginia home. Friends, neighbors, the clink of soda cans. But the air grew heavy, like a storm was pressing down. I was turning 14, surrounded by people. Yet I felt eyes on me, cold and unyielding from somewhere in the room. Make a wish, Naomi. My friend. Sarah called her. Voice bright. I leaned forward, ready to blow out the candles, and whispered a name I hadn't said in years. Ivy. The room went hot, the smoke smell sharper, and for a moment, I swear, I saw her face in the flames. I'm Naomi, and I live in Ashland, Virginia, where the oak trees whisper secrets and the nights hum with cicadas. Our house is small, its paint peeling its floors uneven, but it's home. Or it was until last week. My mom and I have been alone since Dad left when I was 5. But there was someone else, once a girl, who left scars deeper than the ones on my wrist. Her name was Ivy, and I'm not supposed to say it. I didn't know what I was doing when I spoke her name at the party. I didn't know it would bring her back. At the party, my friends buzzed with stories. Naomi's so quiet, Sarah said, nudging me. Bet she's got secrets. Jake from next door grinned. Yeah, like that sister she never talks about. What was her name? Ivy? I froze my soda can cold against my palm. They didn't know. No one did. Ivy was a shadow. I'd buried a memory Mom and I never touched. But the air shifted when Jake said her name, the room too warm, the laughter too loud. I forced a smile, changing the subject, but my skin prickled, like someone was standing just behind me. The party went late, kids spilling into the backyard, music thumping through the open windows. I stayed inside, cleaning up paper plates, trying to shake the unease. Mom was in the kitchen, her hands shaky as she poured lemonade. "You okay, sweetie?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I nodded, but the smell of smoke lingered, faint but persistent, curling around the edges of the room. It wasn't the candles. I checked they were out, wax hardened. Yet the air felt scorched, like something burned nearby. That night, after everyone left, I found it on the coffee table, a small black box tied with a red ribbon. No tag. My heart thudded as I opened it. Inside was a lock of hair, soft and brown, the ends uneven, tied with the same ribbon. It was mine. I'd know my hair anywhere, curly, thick, always tangled. But I hadn't cut it. My hands trembled, the room spinning. You said my name. A voice hummed low and tuneless from the hallway. I spun around, but no one was there. The box felt warm in my hands, like it was breathing. I hid it in my dresser, telling myself it was a prank. But the humming followed me, that melody Ivy used to sing when we were kids, the one that made my stomach knot. I remembered her, then, her sharp eyes, her cruel laugh. She'd been my sister, 1.5 years older, but never kind. She'd rip my dolls apart, hide their heads in the freezer, their plastic eyes glinting. Once, she pushed me down the stairs, breaking my wrist, then lied to Mom with a smile. "She's just playing," Mom would say, but Ivy's games always hurt. I hadn't thought of her in years. Why now? The next day, the house felt wrong. The air was too hot, the walls too close. Mom was quiet, her face pale, avoiding my eyes. I tried to act normal, going to school, laughing with Sora. But the humming was everywhere, in the cafeteria, in my locker, in the wind outside. At home, I found my hairbrush on the bathroom sink, strands, missing the bristles, smeared with something dark. You said my name. The voice came again, closer, like it was inside my head. I ran to my room, locking the door, but the heat followed the smell of smoke, choking me. That night, I dreamed of fire. An attic smoke, thick, and Black Ivy's laughter echoing. She held a match, the flame dancing in her eyes. "Play with me," she said, dropping it. The curtains blazed, the heat searing my skin. I ran, her screams chasing me as the ceiling collapsed. I woke, gasping my room, stifling my pillow, damp with sweat. On my nightstand was the black box, open, the hair gone. In its place was a single word scratched into the wood. Remember, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I went to Mom, my voice shaking. "Who's Ivy?" I asked, though I knew. Her face crumpled, her hands clutching the kitchen counter. "She's gone, Naomi," she said, tears falling. "She died 2 years ago in the fire at Aunt Lorna's. You were there." My mind reeled, memories locked away, spilling out. The funeral, the casket, my own voice, reading a eulogy I didn't recall writing. Why had I forgotten? Mom showed me the scrapbook, her obituary, a photo of me by the grave, my face empty. Ivy was dead, but I'd called her back. The truth burned worse than the dreams. That night at Aunt Lorna's, Ivy and I were playing hide and seek in the attic. She lit matches, giggling, ignoring my pleas to stop. The fire spread, the smoke blinding. I ran my lungs, burning, leaving her behind. Her screams followed me, her voice calling my name as the flames took her. I left her to die. Mom said it was an accident, that no one blamed me, but I saw the lie in her eyes. Ivy blamed me, and I'd spoken her name, waking something I couldn't control. The house became a furnace. The humming was constant, a chorus of accusation. My hair kept vanishing strands found in the sink, the bathtub tied with red ribbons. The word remember appeared everywhere on my mirror, my desk, my skin scratched faintly into my arm. I stopped sleeping, my eyes burning, my body trembling. Sarah noticed, asking why I looked so scared. I couldn't tell her. I'd said her name, and now she was here. The smoke smell grew stronger, the heat unbearable, like the fire was coming again. I tried to fix it. I stood in the backyard where the oak tree loomed and shouted, "I'm sorry, Ivy." The air stilled. The humming stopped. Then she was there, her figure faint, her skin charred, her eyes black. "You left me," she said, her voice ablade. "Now you burn too." The ground grew hot, my feet blistering, but when I blinked, she was gone. The box was at my feet, open, filled with ash that pulsed like a heart. I buried it under the tree, praying it would end. It's been a week since my birthday, and the house is quiet, but not safe. I told Mom everything last night, my voice breaking as I confessed. I left her mom. I ran. She listened, her face pale, her hands cold. When I finished, she hugged me, but her eyes were wrong, distant, like she saw someone else. "You shouldn't have said her name," she whispered, her voice not quite hers. She turned away, humming that melody, Ivy's melody, as she walked to her room. What does she know that I don't? I keep my door locked, my windows shut, but the smoke smell lingers. The heat creeps in. The word remember is still on my mirror, a reminder of what I did. I called her back, and she's not just in the house, she's in us. I don't know if Mom's hiding something, if Ivy's reached her too. But last night, I found a red ribbon in Mom's purse, tied around a lock of hair that wasn't mine. Who's next? I stay awake, watching Mom's door, waiting for the humming to start again. Ivy's here, and I don't think she's alone. The wind carried her voice through the pines, a lullaby that wasn't meant for me, yet it pulled me deeper into the forest. I was alone, walking the trails behind our Ashland, Oregon, home the night air sharp with pine and earth. My flashlight flickered its beam, barely cutting through the fog. I was 15, restless, escaping the weight of our house. But the lullaby, soft, haunting, familiar, stopped me cold. She was singing again. A voice I hadn't heard in years, one I thought I'd buried. Why was she here, in the trees? I live in a town where the forests feel alive, their shadows holding secrets older than the houses. Our home is a creaking two-story, its windows rattling in the wind, its walls heavy with silence. I'm writing this because I can't shake her voice the way it weaves through my thoughts. She was my sister, or so I thought. Her name was Elena, and she's been gone for years. But that night, in the forest, I felt her closer than ever, and now I don't know what's real. I walked those trails often, especially when Mom was lost in her grief, her eyes red from crying over someone I didn't fully remember. That night, the forest was different. Too quiet, the air too heavy. My sneakers sank into the damp earth, the pines looming like sentinels. The lullaby started faintly, a melody I knew from childhood, one that used to calm my nightmares. Why did it scare me? Now, I followed it, my breath shallow, my flashlight trembling. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches brushing my shoulders, the air growing colder with every step. The lullaby grew louder, guiding me to a clearing where the fog hung thick, the ground soft with pine needles. My flashlight caught something, a shape in the mist. A girl with long, dark hair, her back to me, singing. Her voice was warm, but the air around her was ice. Elena, I whispered, my voice shaking. She didn't turn, but the singing stopped the silence, heavier than before. My heart pounded as I stepped closer, the ground sinking under my weight. Her hoodie was familiar, oversized, the one she always wore. But she's gone, isn't she? I ran home, my lungs burning, the lullaby echoing in my head. Mom was in the kitchen, her hands clutching a coffee mug, her face pale. "You're late," she said, her voice sharp. I didn't tell her about the forest, the voice. I couldn't. But that night, as I lay in bed, the lullaby returned, seeping through the walls. My room felt wrong. The shadows too sharp, the air too warm. I found scratches on my window, faint but deliberate spelling. Remember. Who was she? I saw her again in my mind, singing, brushing my hair. Her fingers cold but gentle. Why couldn't I place her face? The next day, I stayed home, my head throbbing. Mom was quieter than usual, her eyes avoiding mine. I asked about the lullaby, hoping for answers. Just the wind, she said, but her hands shook. I went back to the forest, desperate to understand. The clearing was empty, but the ground was marked scratches in the dirt, forming the same word. Remember. The air smelled of ash, sharp and bitter, like something burned long ago. Was she trying to tell me something? I felt her closer now, her voice humming inside my skull. I stopped sleeping the lullaby, a constant drone pulling up memories I didn't trust. I saw her everywhere, in the reflection of my phone, in the shadows of the pines, her face always blurred. At school, I was a ghost, my friends noticing my trembling hands, my hollow eyes. You okay? Lena? Mattie asked, her voice soft. I shook my head, unable to speak. I didn't know who I was anymore. The forest called me back, night after night. The lullaby, louder, the air heavier. Each time I found new scratches on trees, on rocks, spelling, remember. I confronted Mom, my voice breaking. Who's Elena? I demanded the name, burning my tongue. Her face crumpled, tears falling. She was your sister, she whispered. She died 2 years ago in a car crash. You were there when we got the call. My mind reeled images, flooding in the crash, the funeral, my own tears. But they were wrong, incomplete. Elena had been in the car, hit black ice, died instantly. But the night before, I'd heard her singing, felt her hand on my forehead. I'll miss you, she'd said. But now I wasn't sure what she meant. The truth hit like a wave. Elena wasn't just visiting. She was pulling me into something bigger. The forest wasn't just a place. It was hers. I found a journal in Mom's room, hidden under her bed, filled with her handwriting. Elena's here, it read. She's in the trees. Pages were torn, scratched with, remember, the ink smudged with ash. What did Mom know? I went back to the clearing, the lullaby, deafening, the air scorching. She was there, her figure faint, her eyes glowing. You're not done, she whispered. You have to see. I researched, desperate for answers. Books on spirits spoke of places holding power, forests tied to the dead. Ashland's pines had stories, whispers of lost souls, of voices in the wind. Elena wasn't just a ghost. She was part of the forest, her death tied to it. The crash happened near those trees, the car slamming into a pine. Was that why she was here? I saw her in dreams, leading me deeper into the woods, her lullaby, a summons. Come to me, she sang, her voice a blade. My memories shifted. Elena wasn't always kind, her eyes sharp, her laugh cold. Was she ever my sister? Mom changed too. She hummed the lullaby absent-mindedly, her eyes distant, her hands scratching patterns into the table. Remember, I found her in the backyard one night, staring at the pines, her face blank. "She's calling," she whispered, "not to me." I tried to break the hold burning sage, shouting Elena's name into the forest, but the lullaby grew louder, the air hotter. The scratches appeared on my arms, faint, but burning spelling, remember. She wasn't just visiting. She was claiming us. I went back to the clearing, my flashlight shaking. The ground was soft, the air thick with ash. Elena stood there, her figure clearer, her face not quite hers. "You belong here," she said, her voice a chorus of wind and fire. The trees leaned closer, their branches forming a cage. I ran, my skin burning, the lullaby chasing me. What did she want? I didn't know, but I felt it. Something ancient tied to the forest, using her voice. 9 years later, I'm still in Ashland, but the forest is never far. The lullaby lingers faint but constant in every gust of wind. I don't trust my memories of Elena, her face, her voice, her death. Last week, I went back to the clearing, drawn by a pull I couldn't fight. The pines were silent, but the ground was marked a carving on a tree. Elena's face, her eyes hollow, the word "remember" etched beneath. She's not gone. She's the forest now. Mom doesn't talk about her, but I see it in her eyes. The same glow, the same hum. I found a sketch in her room, one I didn't draw, Elena in the pines, her hands reaching for me. What if the forest took her, and now it wants us? I don't know if Elena was ever my sister, or if the trees made her something else. What if we're next? I avoid the pines, keep my windows shut, but the lullaby finds me. Elena's out there, and she's waiting. Every night, I check my reflection in the mirror, not to fix my hair or adjust my shirt, but to make sure it's still me, staring back. Because 7 years ago, I learned that the person you love most, the one you share a room with, whose laugh you know by heart, might not be who you think. My sister, Alina, she stopped being herself one night in Pune, and whatever took her place has been watching me ever since. I was 11, a scrawny kid with too many questions, living in the shadow of my older sister, Alina, who was 18, and everything I wasn't. She moved through our new house in Pune's quiet outskirts, like a shadow, calm, calculated, her long black hair always falling perfectly over one shoulder. I was loud, curious, the kind of kid who'd talk to the walls if no one else was around. Our parents thought sharing a room would bring us closer, but Alina was a locked diary, and I was too young to find the key. The house itself was modest, with pale yellow walls that seemed to soak up the monsoon dampness. Our bunk bed sat against a window overlooking a gnarled mango tree, its branches scraping the glass when the wind howled. I took the top bunk, pretending it was a spaceship. Alina claimed the bottom, saying she liked the dark, enclosed space. At first, it was just sibling bickering, her rolling her eyes when I left crumbs on the desk, me whining when she hogged the mirror. But there was something about her I couldn't shake, something that made my stomach twist. Even before the night everything changed, Alina never smiled in photos. Not once. I'd flip through old albums, her as a toddler, her at 10, her at 16, and her face was always blank. Lips pressed into a straight line, eyes staring through the camera like it owed her something. I asked Mom once, expecting a simple answer, but she just shrugged, her voice soft. That's just Alina. Some kids are like that. But it wasn't just that. Her eyes in those pictures didn't look empty. They looked wrong, like she was holding back something no one else could see. I'd catch her, sometimes, staring at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, not moving, not blinking, just studying herself like she was memorizing her own face. What are you looking for? I wanted to ask, but the words always stuck in my throat. That unease grew roots the night of the open house, when the house filled with strangers and the air turned thick with chaos. The open house was Dad's idea, a way to meet his extended family after we moved. Uncles, I'd never heard of, aunties with too much perfume, and kids who ran through the house screaming, leaving sticky handprints on the walls. I gorged on cupcakes and Coca-Cola, buzzing with sugar, while Alina slipped away early, claiming a headache. By midnight, the last guests stumbled out, and the house fell into an eerie stillness, like it was exhaling after holding its breath. Exhausted, but wired, I stayed up in the living room, sprawled on the couch, my tablet glowing with a racing game. The ceiling fan spun lazily, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Around 2:15 a.m., my eyes grew heavy, and I dragged myself to our room, climbing the bunk bed ladder as quietly as I could. Alina's bed was a dark shape below her, breathing slow and steady, or so I thought. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, the street lamp's light slicing through the blinds, painting stripes across the fan. You're safe here, I told myself. But the house felt too quiet, like it was listening. That's when the nightmare began, pulling me into a place I couldn't escape. I wasn't asleep. Not really. My body was heavy, pinned to the mattress, my limbs frozen, like they'd been dipped in cement. The room was the same, but wrong. The air was thick, humid, pressing against my chest. I tried to move my head, but my neck wouldn't budge. My eyes darted to the side, and there, sitting cross-legged on Alina's bed, was her, or something wearing her skin. Her long hair hung like a curtain, half covering her face, but her eyes were wrong. No pupils, just white, glowing faintly in the dark. Her mouth stretched into a smile, too wide, too sharp, like her cheeks might split. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, her head tilting slowly, unnaturally, like a puppet on loose strings. "You're dreaming," I screamed in my head, but my body wouldn't listen. My heart pounded, each beat echoing in my skull. Then a hand, warm, soft, gripped mine. "Hey, you, okay?" The voice was Alina's, gentle, familiar. My eyes snapped open, and I was back, gasping, sweat soaking my shirt. Alina stood by my bunk. Her face concerned her eyes. Normal brown human. "You were shaking," she said, her voice steady. "Bad dream." I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. It was just a dream, I told myself. But as I climbed down to get water, my legs trembled. The hallway felt too long, the shadows too deep. When I glanced back, Alina was still there halfway in the doorway, watching me. She's fine, I thought. But then I stepped into the kitchen, and everything I knew about my sister shattered. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the microwave's faint green glow. I reached for the steel jug, my hands still shaking, when I noticed the refrigerator door ajar. A figure crouched in front of it, barefoot, wearing Alina's gray hoodie. It was her, Alina, rummaging through the lower shelf, her movements slow, deliberate. She looked up, her face half hidden in shadow. "Shh, you'll wake them," she said, her voice low, almost playful. "I'm making noodles. Want some?" My glass nearly slipped from my hand. How is she here? I'd just seen her in our room, standing by the door, watching me leave. My mouth went dry, my tongue heavy. "How long have you been here?" I managed my voice, barely above a whisper. She tilted her head, her eyes glinting in the dim light. 20, 30 minutes. Looking for those green chilies Mom bought. I stared, my mind racing. 20 minutes. That was impossible. She'd been in our room, holding my hand, waking me from the nightmare. My legs moved before my brain caught up, backing me toward the living room. Nothing I muttered when she raised an eyebrow. I didn't sleep that night, curled on the couch, the lights blazing. my blanket pulled tight. Who was in our room? The question burned, and the answer was worse than I could imagine. The days that followed were a slow descent into dread. Alina acted normal, too normal. She'd hum while brushing her hair, help Mom with dinner, even laugh at Dad's bad jokes. But I saw things no one else did. I'd catch her standing in the corner of the living room, staring at the wall, her lips moving silently, like she was talking to someone I couldn't see. Once I opened her wardrobe to borrow a comb and found a notebook tucked behind her clothes. The pages were filled with strange, looping symbols. Not Hindi, not English, not anything I recognized. I flipped through it, my stomach twisting until I saw a sketch, a face eyeless with a stretched, toothy grin. It looked like the thing from my nightmare. I slammed the book shut, my hands trembling, and never touched it again. At a family dinner, when our cousin cracked a joke, everyone laughed, except Alina. She stared at him, her lips curling into that same unnatural smile, her eyes unblinking, like she was peeling him apart in her mind. I stopped sleeping in our room, making excuses. Mosquitoes, a bad mattress, anything to avoid her. But the fear followed me. I'd wake to the feeling of a hand brushing my arm, warm and soft, and her voice in my head. "Hey, you okay?" Each time I'd jolt upright, alone, the room empty, but heavy, like someone had just left. 7 years passed. We moved to a new city, and Alina went to Bangalore for college. I got my own room, my own life. But the memories clung like damp rot. I avoided her calls, her texts, telling myself I was busy, but really I was scared. Scared of what I'd see in her eyes, scared of that smile. Then, 2 weeks ago, I couldn't avoid her anymore. We had a video call for Mom's birthday, just the 3 of us. Alina's face filled the screen, her hair longer, her voice bright. "She's fine," I told myself, forcing a smile. But then the internet glitched. The screen froze, her image stuttering, and for a split second, her smile stretched wider, sharper, tearing past the edges of her face. Her eyes darkened, not brown, but black bottomless. The screen went blank, and when it flickered back, she was normal, laughing about Mom's cake. "You okay?" she asked, her voice cutting through the static. She knows, I thought, my heart hammering. I ended the call early, my hands shaking so badly, I dropped my phone. That night, as I lay in bed, the darkness pressed against me, heavy alive. A hand, warm, soft, closed around mine. "Hey, you okay?" The voice was hers, clear as day, but my room was empty. I haven't slept since. Every mirror, every shadow, every quiet moment feels like her, or whatever she became, watching, waiting, smiling that smile. She's not my sister anymore, I tell myself. But the truth is worse. Whatever took her knows me, and it's not done. When I was 8, I thought monsters lived in storybooks, not in the eyes of my sister, but in that pale yellow house in New Jersey. Something crawled out of the walls and into Emily's mind, twisting her into someone I didn't know. Now, years later, I still find her drawings under my pillow, and they're not hers anymore. They're mine, in my handwriting, begging me to let it in. I was 8 years old, small for my age, with tangled hair and a habit of talking to myself when I got nervous. My sister, Emily, 9, was my opposite, quiet, sharp-eyed, the kind of kid who could stare at a puzzle for hours and solve it without a word. We'd just moved to a cul-de-sac in suburban New Jersey, a place where every house looked like it was trying too hard to be perfect. Our new home was a 2-story box with white trim and a red door that stuck when it rained. Inside, it smelled of dust and old promises, like the attic had been hoarding secrets for decades. Mom and Dad were thrilled, calling it their fresh start after years of scraping by in apartments. To me, it felt like a cage, especially the bedroom Emily and I shared, with its single window and a closet that never seemed to close right. My bed sat under the window, catching the glow of street lights. Emily's was by the closet, where the shadows pooled like ink. At first, it was just us being us, her, ignoring my chatter, me stealing her pencils. But then Emily started locking the door, and the house stopped feeling like ours. The change came slowly, like a stain spreading through cloth. Emily had always been private, but after we moved, she turned inward, her eyes darting to corners when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd lock our bedroom door in the afternoons, telling me to stay out, her voice sharp, final. "I'm busy, Lily," she'd say, and I'd slump downstairs, pretending it didn't hurt. But I was curious. Too curious. I'd press my ear to the door, holding my breath, and hear voices, not just hers, but others, low and wet, like they were speaking through mud. 2, sometimes 3, weaving together in a language I didn't know. My heart would race, and I'd knock my knuckles trembling. "Who are you talking to?" I'd ask, and she'd snap, "No one." When she finally opened the door, her hair was mussed, like someone had been running their fingers through it, and her eyes were glassy, unfocused. Once, I caught a whiff of something sour, like damp earth after a storm clinging to her clothes. She's just playing, I told myself, but my stomach twisted. I told Mom, hoping she'd fix it, but she just smiled, her voice soft. Emily's creative. Lily. Maybe she'll write books someday. Dad grunted, told me to stop snooping. But I knew Emily wasn't playing. Something was in there with her, and it wasn't a game. One night in September, the air heavy with the promise of rain, I woke to Emily's voice in the dark. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a blade. She was sitting up in her bed, her silhouette sharp against the closet's outline. "Don't want to," she said, her voice trembling. "No, it's hers." A pause, then a giggle, low and wrong, like it had been pulled from someone else's throat. I sat up, my blanket clutched tight, and flicked on my lamp. Emily. Her head turned slowly, her eyes wide, unblinking, fixed on the closet. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice small. She blinked once, her lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "He likes your hair," she said, pointing at the closet. The man in the wall. My breath caught. The closet door was cracked open, just an inch, but the darkness inside felt alive, watching. I didn't sleep that night. My eyes glued to the ceiling, every creak of the house twisting my nerves tighter. "It's just a bad dream," I told myself. But Emily's words echoed, and the closet seemed to breathe. By October, Emily was fading. She stopped eating properly, picking at her dinner, until it went cold, her fork scraping the plate in slow, deliberate circles. At the table, she'd mutter to herself, her lips moving like she was counting something only she could see. Sometimes she'd laugh, a soft, hollow sound, when no one had spoken. I found her drawings in her backpack, crumpled pages that made my skin crawl, stick figures dangling from trees, their necks bent at wrong angles, shadowy shapes spilling from vents, girls with their mouths stitched shut, their eyes wide and empty. In every sketch, there was a door, and behind it, a black figure with no face, its edges smudged like it was bleeding into the paper. I showed them to Mom, my hands shaking, but she sighed, her voice tired. "She's going through a phase, Lily." Dad was harsher, telling Emily to stop scaring me. That night, I overheard them talking to her, their voices muffled through the wall. Emily's response was clear, chilling. He told me not to stop. Later, under my blanket, she leaned close, her breath warm against my ear. "He doesn't like it when they yell." she said, her voice flat. I pulled the blanket tighter, my heart pounding, and pretended to sleep. The closet became my obsession. It was just a wooden door, chipped paint, curling at the edges. But it felt wrong, like it was holding something back. One Saturday, while Mom and Dad were out buying groceries, I decided to look. Emily was silent that morning, sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. I was picking up socks from under my bed when I noticed the closet door ajar, a sliver of darkness peeking through. My pulse quickened, but curiosity won. I pulled the door open, the hinges groaning, and stepped inside. The air was thick, heavy, with the smell of old wood and something metallic, like rust. At first, it was just clothes, Emily's jackets, my winter boots. Then I saw it, a smear on the back wall, dark and sticky, shaped like small handprints, child-sized, pressed into the wood. My throat tightened. I leaned closer, my fingers brushing the wall, and felt something cold alive pulse beneath the surface. Emily's scream shattered the silence. I spun around. She was on her bed, eyes wild, pointing at me. "Don't go in there," she shrieked. He said not to. I stumbled back, my heart hammering, as she dropped to the floor, crawling toward me, her nails digging into the wood. She slammed the closet shut, her hands trembling. He said, "If you open it again, he'll take you instead." That night, I heard it scratching inside the walls, slow and deliberate, like nails carving a message. I cried my sobs, muffled by my pillow, but Emily just watched from her bed, her eyes glinting in the dark. November. Broke Emily. She stopped going to school, stopped speaking, just sat in our room, her lips moving silently, her eyes fixed on the wall. I couldn't take it anymore. I started sleeping on the couch, the living room's dim light, my only comfort. One night, I woke to a presence, close, too close. My eyes snapped open, but no one was there. On the coffee table, a note in crayon, in Emily's jagged handwriting. "You're next." My blood ran cold. I begged Mom and Dad to do something. Take her to a doctor, a therapist, anything. They brushed it off, calling it a phase, blaming my horror movies. But then, on December 10th, everything changed. I came home from school to find the bedroom door open, the air thick, with a sour, rotting smell. Emily was gone, but the closet was open. A hole carved into the back wall, no bigger than a dog door, its edges jagged and wet. The handprints were darker now, more defined, like they'd been painted in blood. I should have run, should have screamed. but I crawled through my knees, scraping the wood. On the other side was darkness, a void that smelled of decay and meat. Voices whispered dozens children, and others, their words twisting into my skin. A hand grabbed my ankle, cold and bony. I screamed, scrambling back, falling into our room. Emily stood at the door, her face blank. He said, "You weren't ready yet," she said, her voice low. "But soon." That night, my parents woke to Emily's screams. They found her in front of the closet, covered in scratches, her eyes rolled back, chanting, "Don't let him in." They rushed her to the hospital. She never came back. The house is quiet now. I sleep in a different room. The old bedroom, locked, the closet nailed shut. Emily's in a psychiatric facility 3 towns over. I'm not allowed to visit. My parents don't talk about her, their faces tight with guilt. But the thing that took her isn't gone. I hear scratching in the walls at night, faint but persistent, like it's waiting. Sometimes I find notes slipped under my door, written in crayon. He still remembers. You're next. Once I woke to Emily standing in the hallway, her smile wide, her eyes empty, whispering, "He chose me first, but he likes you more." I blinked, and she was gone. Last week, I found a drawing under my pillow, not Emily's, but mine, in my own handwriting. A faceless figure behind a door, its hand reaching out. "Let me in," it said, and I don't know if it's her or me writing anymore. The walls are closing in, and I'm running out of places to hide. My sister's laughter used to light up our home, but that summer, something stole her voice and replaced it with a darkness that still watches me. In the suffocating heat of Livermore, India, in 2011, I learned that some doors, once opened, never truly close. My sister was Leanna, 2 years older, with hair like midnight silk and eyes that once held the sun. We grew up in a creaky house of dark wood and cool cement, nestled between rice fields and forests that swallowed sound. Our home was a sanctuary, or so I thought, until the crows came. The air in Livermore was thick, heavy, with the scent of wet earth and jasmine. But it was the neem tree outside Liana's window that defined our summers. Its gnarled branches clawed at the glass, and every year, blackbirds and crows nested there, their cries piercing the night like a warning. Our grandmother, with her weathered hands and knowing eyes, used to say, "Never sit by that window with your hair loose when they're nesting. They're not always birds." I laughed, then a child's dismissal of old tales. Liana did too, her giggle bright and fearless. But now, I wish I'd listened. That summer, I was 15, Liana 17. Our parents left for Kolkata to visit our aunt in the hospital, leaving us with our cousin Desh and his friend Ryu college boys on break. The house felt alive with their laughter, board games, and late-night horror movies. Liana, always the bold one, ate her meals by the window, claiming the breeze cooled her skin. One afternoon, a crow landed on the sill, its eyes, like polished obsidian, staring into her soul. She froze rice halfway to her mouth. "It's like it knows me," she said, her voice trembling beneath a forced laugh. I brushed it off, but the crow returned the next day, and the next, always at noon, always watching. By the third day, Liana had a plate ready for it. Rice, a scrap of meat, a slice of cucumber. She placed it on the sill, her fingers lingering as the crow tilted its head, unblinking. Desh laughed, filming it on his phone. "Liana's got a pet now," he teased. But I saw her eyes, barren and distant, as if she saw something beyond the bird. That night, she barely touched her dinner. "I'm full," she murmured, pushing her plate away. Her hands shook, and her gaze drifted to the window, where the neem tree's shadow danced in the moonlight. Later, I woke to the sound of the refrigerator door slamming. The clock read 2:17 a.m. Barefoot, I padded to the kitchen, the air thick with the scent of monsoon damp. Liana stood there, fridge wide open, glass bottles shattered at her feet. She was shoving cold rotis into her mouth, chewing with a ferocity that wasn't human. Her head snapped toward me, and I froze. Her eyes were black, not the warm brown I knew, but a void that swallowed light. A low growl rumbled from her throat, and she collapsed, crumbs scattered across her chin. I screamed for Desh and Ryu. They found her unconscious, her skin clammy. "She's sleepwalking," Ryu said, but his voice wavered. We carried her to bed, her body limp, her breath shallow. The next morning, she acted as if nothing happened, but a fever burned through her, 104.8. Her skin hot to the touch. She mumbled words I couldn't understand, her body jerking like a marionette on broken strings. "I hear it calling," she whispered, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. The days blurred into a haze of fear. Liana refused food during the day, her plate untouched, but at night she raided the kitchen. We locked the fridge. She broke the lock with a strength that shouldn't have been hers. Desh tried to confront her once, grabbing her arm as she tore through a loaf of bread. She flung him across the room, his body hitting the wall with a thud. "That's not your sister," Ryu whispered to me. Later, his face pale. "Something's wrong with her." When our mother returned, she took one look at Liana and screamed, not because of the fever, but because of how she moved. Liana was crawling backward on all fours, her head tilted at an unnatural angle, her hair dragging across the floor. "I want to go home," she hissed, her voice layered as if another spoke through her. Mother's hands trembled as she called a neurologist. Scans showed nothing. Blood tests were clean. No answers, only questions. The air in the house grew heavier, the scent of incense mixing with something sour, like rotting fruit. I started noticing things. Liana's shadow seemed too long stretching across the wall, even when the light didn't justify it. The crows outside grew louder, their cries no longer random, but rhythmic, a chant that echoed in my dreams. One night, I woke to find her standing at my bedside, her hair loose, her eyes black again. "It's hungry," she whispered, her breath cold against my cheek. I didn't sleep after that. Desperate, we called Father Samson a priest known in Rivermore for his quiet skepticism. He arrived with a worn leather bag, his face calm until he saw Liana. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, staring at the window, her lips moving silently. He placed a hand on her forehead, whispering a prayer. Her laughter shattered the silence, a roar that shook the walls. Her head snapped back, and a voice, not hers, ancient and hoarse, spoke. 7. There are 7 of us. She fed us. She called us. She belongs to us now. Father Samson's face paled. "Why her?" he asked, his voice steady, but strained. The voice answered in a chorus. She opened her hair. She opened her window. She opened herself. He stepped back, crossing himself. The cleansing began that night. Prayers, incense, salt lines drawn around the house. Liana screamed her body, thrashing her voice, alternating between her own and the chorus of 7. I held her hand, feeling her bones twist beneath my grip, her skin ice cold. The neem tree outside seemed to pulse with life, its branches scraping the glass, louder, the crow's cries rising to a fever pitch. On the 3rd night, as the final prayer ended, the crows screamed as one, a sound like death itself, then fell silent. The air cleared, the house stilled. Father Samson placed a silver chain around Liana's neck, a pendant etched with an ancient symbol. "She must wear this always," he said. If she removes it, they will return and they won't leave. Liana survived. But the sister I knew didn't. Her eyes, once bright, were dull, her laughter gone. She returned to school, but she was a shadow, staring out windows, as if waiting for something. The crows never returned, not a single one. Years passed. In 2018, she married Rohit, a kind man who loved her despite her silences. They tried for children, but each pregnancy ended in miscarriages. At 5 months, the fetuses inexplicably stunted. No doctor could explain it. After the third, an emergency surgery nearly killed her. They gave up adopting a little girl last year, a child Liana loves fiercely, but the pendant is gone. She told me she lost it during a trip. Her voice too casual, her eyes avoiding mine. I begged her to see Father Samson again. She laughed, a hollow sound. They wouldn't hurt a mother, she said. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. Not when I saw her brushing her daughter's hair, whispering words I couldn't hear her fingers, moving with a precision that felt wrong. 2 weeks ago, I visited them. The house was warm, filled with the scent of curry and the sound of their daughter's laughter. But at night, I woke to a familiar sound, the distant caw of crows, faint but growing closer. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the mind. Then, last week, their daughter woke, screaming. Mama was flying in the room. She cried, her small body trembling. Her hair was floating, and there were birds in the dark. I haven't slept since. I keep my lights on my windows locked, my hair tied tight. Liana's words, after her first miscarriage, haunt me. They said, "I'd never be a mother," she whispered. If I tried, they'd take it. She was right. Some things never let go. Every night, I hear the crows, their cries, no longer distant, but circling, waiting. And I know deep in my bones that the 7 are still out there, watching. Hungry for the door Liana opened all those years ago. In the silence of a village where screams vanish into the mountains, I learned that darkness doesn't just live in shadows. It lives in the people you love. My sister, Marielle, was 16 when something found her in our creaky old house in San Rafael del Norte. Something that spoke her name in the night and left claw marks on her soul. Now, years later, I still feel it watching me. And I'm terrified it's not done. I was 13, a skinny girl with too many freckles and a habit of biting my nails when I was scared. My sister, Marielle, 16, was different. Quiet. Her dark eyes always lost in a sketchbook. Her long hair tied back with a ribbon like she was guarding a secret. After Dad died in a car accident, Mom moved us to San Rafael del Norte, a remote village in the Visayan region of the Philippines, where the air smelled of wet earth, and the nearest neighbor was a half-mile away. Our house was old wooden, with a rusty tin roof that groaned under the rain. The floors creaked under every step, and the walls seemed to hold their breath like they knew something we didn't. Marielle and I weren't close. Not really. She'd snap at me to knock before entering her room, and I'd roll my eyes, pretending it didn't sting. But I loved her in that fierce, unspoken way siblings do. The village was quiet. Too quiet. With no Wi-Fi, barely any phone signal, and a single dirt road leading to the barangay school 30 minutes away. Our landlord, Lo Mateo, lived in the only other house we could see a speck of light across the field. "Shout if you need me," he'd said, his smile crooked. Sound travels fast in the hills. But even then, I knew some things didn't need sound to find you. The first sign came in late August, when the monsoon rains turned the ground to mud. I'd gone to the kitchen for water, the house dark, except for the faint glow of a lantern. Marielle's door was closed, but I heard her voice low and slurred, like she was speaking through water. I pressed my ear to the wood, my heart thumping. She was talking, not to a phone, not to herself, but to something. "Don't open the door," she said, her voice calm but sharp, like a warning meant for me. I froze my hand inches from the knob. "Go to sleep, Isa," she added softer now, but it didn't feel like her. I backed away, my bare feet cold on the floor, and climbed into bed, my mind racing. "She's just tired," I told myself, but the air felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. The next morning, I asked her about it over breakfast, my voice small. "You okay?" She stabbed her spoon into her rice, her eyes narrowing. "Why wouldn't I be?" Her tone was sharp, like I'd accused her of something. I didn't push, but I noticed her sketchbook on the table open to a drawing of a window, its frame jagged with dark shapes pressing against the glass. I shut it quickly, my fingers trembling, and pretended I hadn't seen. 2 weeks later, a Sunday night, the power went out. The house plunged into darkness, the kind that feels alive, pressing against your skin. I was in the living room, watching a K-drama on our small TV, Mom asleep on the couch beside me. Marielle was in her room, as usual, her door closed. Around 1:20 a.m., the screen went black, and the silence was deafening. Then I heard it, scratching, faint, but deliberate, like nails dragging across wood, coming from Marielle's room. My stomach twisted. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer, its beam shaky in my hand. Isa. Her voice came barely audible through the door. Come here. My feet moved before I could think, the floor cold under my toes. It's in here with me, she said, her voice trembling. I pressed my ear to the door, my heart pounding. What is it? I asked, my voice barely a breath. Silence. Then her breathing ragged, like she was crying. Don't open it, she screamed suddenly. So loud, I stumbled back, the flashlight flickering. Mom woke her eyes wide, stumbling into the hallway. What's going on? She demanded. I stammered. Marielle said, something's in her room. Mom tried the door locked. Marielle opened this door. No answer. Minutes passed, the air thick with tension, until the lock clicked. Marielle stood there, her face pale, her hands shaking. There was something by my window, she said, her voice small. Mom flung the curtains open. Nothing, just the dark outline of a mango tree. But the window latch was unhooked, swinging loose. We slept in the living room that night, the three of us huddled together, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still there, watching. Marielle changed after that night. It wasn't sudden, not like in movies where someone snaps. It was slow, insidious, like a shadow creeping across the floor. She stopped eating properly, her plates left untouched, her eyes sunken and heavy, her sketchbook filled with new drawings, dark forests, windows, with no glass faces, with no eyes, their mouths stretched into silent screams. She'd sit in her room for hours, staring at the wall, her lips moving, like she was talking to someone I couldn't see. Once, I caught her in the kitchen at 3 a.m., her back to me, her head pressed against the wall, whispering in a tone so soft, so loving. It made my skin crawl. Isa, she said, turning slowly, her eyes finding me in the dark. You shouldn't be up. I backed away, my heart racing, and locked myself in my room. Mom started noticing, too. She'd find Marielle drawing in the middle of the night, her fingers smudged with charcoal, muttering words that didn't make sense. Sharp, guttural sounds, like a language from another world. One day, Marielle refused to eat or speak, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. That night, she attacked Mom, her nails digging into Mom's arm, drawing blood when Mom tried to take her sketchbook. I'm not done talking to her. Marielle growled, her voice low and unfamiliar. Who? I asked, my voice trembling. She looked at me, her eyes dark, bottomless. The one who looks like you, she said. and my blood ran cold. The breaking point came a week later. I woke to Mom's screams. Not Marielle's echoing through the house. I bolted into the hallway, my heart in my throat, and found Mom outside Marielle's room, her face white with shock. The door was open, the room a wreck, papers scattered, dresser toppled, curtains shredded. Marielle was gone. We searched the house, the yard, the field, our voices hoarse from calling her name. Lo Mateo came, his flashlight sweeping the dark, but found nothing. The barangay captain organized a search, neighbors joining with lanterns, their faces grim. At sunrise, I found her standing in the backyard, barefoot, covered in mud, her eyes fixed on the mango tree. Its branches swayed, though there was no wind, and the air smelled of damp earth and something sour, like rot. I touched her shoulder, my hand shaking. She turned slowly, her face blank. "It's not done with me yet," she said, her voice flat, like she was reciting someone else's words. I pulled her inside, her skin cold under my fingers, and Mom wept, holding her tight. That day, we called a mananambal, a local healer. Lo Mateo swore by. He came with a bag of herbs and a wooden cross, his face lined with years of secrets. He walked into Marielle's room, his eyes narrowing at the window, the tree, the air. "Something dark has attached itself to her," he said, his voice steady. "It came the night you heard the scratching. It mimics voices, makes you trust it." He burned herbs chanted in Visayan, sprinkled salt around the bed. Marielle twitched her eyes, rolling back her voice, hissing words. I didn't understand. The air grew heavy, the room cold, and for a moment I swore I saw a shadow move across the wall, tall and thin, with no face. The ritual ended with Marielle collapsing, her breathing steady, her eyes closed. It might leave, the healer said, but if she listens to it again, it could take her soul for good. We moved back to Balo 6 months later, when Mom had enough money. Marielle got better, or so it seemed. She stopped drawing, stopped whispering to walls. She'd smile sometimes, but it was fragile, like cracked glass. We never talked about that night, but I saw it in her eyes. The shadow was still there, waiting. I started sleeping with a light on my door locked, but sometimes I'd wake to the feeling of eyes on me, heavy, unblinking. Once I found her standing in her room, staring at a corner, her lips moving silently. "It's still here," she said. One night, her eyes shut, her voice barely audible. Then she smiled, a slow, unnatural curl of her lips. it likes you too. I'm in college now, in a city far from San Rafael del Norte. I don't visit often, but when I do, I feel it, the weight of that house, the mango tree's shadow, stretching too far. Last month, I found a sketch under my pillow, not in Marielle's hand, but mine, though I don't remember drawing it. A window, jagged with a shadow, pressing against it, its fingers long and thin. I burned it, my hands shaking, but at night I hear scratching, faint, but persistent, like it's carving its way back. It's not done, I think, and I wonder if it ever will be. When we moved to that house, I thought the worst thing was leaving my friends behind, but something was already waiting for us, hiding under the floorboards. My name is Eli, and in the fall of 2017, my family traded the noise of Chicago for the suffocating quiet of Carver, Illinois. I was 11, too young to understand why my dad's new job felt like a lifeline, too old to ignore the way our new home seemed to breathe. The house on that dead-end street was a 2-story box with faded siding and a double garage my mom, Melissa, loved. My sister, Ava, 13, and bookish, was my anchor until she became something else. Carver was the kind of place where lawns were too perfect, and the silence at night pressed against your chest. Our house smelled of old varnish and something metallic, like coins left in a drawer too long. Ava and I shared the upstairs hallway, my room next to hers, the floorboards creaking under every step. At first, it was just a house. Mom hummed Fleetwood Mac in the kitchen, Dad fixed hinges, and Ava helped me with math homework. But by the second week, I noticed the cold spots, places where the air turned sharp, like standing over a grave. Ava changed first. She came downstairs one rainy Sunday, her face blank, holding a sheet of paper. "Look what I drew," she said, her voice flat as glass. It was us, Mom, Dad, Ava, me sketched in black marker, but our faces were empty, just ovals of white. "Why no eyes?" I asked, my stomach twisting. She tilted her head, her lips curling into a slow, wrong smile. "It's just a drawing, Eli." She tore it in half and left the pieces on the floor. I taped them back together, later hiding them under my bed. But I couldn't shake the feeling that those blank faces were watching me. The house started to speak at night. Not voices, not yet, but sounds. Soft scratches beneath the floor, like nails dragging through wood. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, convincing myself it was mice. Ava's room was worse. I'd hear her whispering after midnight, low and rhythmic, not the giggly phone calls she used to have. Once I pressed my ear to her door and caught words that weren't English sharp and guttural, like she was chanting to something. I knocked my heart pounding. "Who are you talking to?" Silence. Then, her voice cold. "No one, Eli. Go to bed." When she opened the door, her hair was mussed, her eyes glassy, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth. My parents didn't notice. Not at first. Dad was busy with his warehouse job, Mom with her new garden. They hired Yolanda, a housekeeper, with a warm laugh to clean while they worked. Yolanda was the first to see it. One afternoon, she came downstairs, her face tight, holding a small bundle wrapped in red thread. "Found this under the bathroom sink," she said to Mom. "Smells like blood." It was a crude doll, no bigger than my hand, with buttons for eyes and hair made of dark strands mine, I realized later from my brush. Mom's face paled. "Probably from the last tenants," she said, but her voice shook. She told Yolanda to throw it out. 2 days later, Yolanda quit. "No offense, ma'am," she said, "but that house ain't right. Especially that girl's room." The accidents started soon after. Mom sliced her hand, cutting lemons, blood pooling on the counter. Dad slipped on the basement stairs, his ribs bruised purple. I was in the shower when the curtain rod fell, cracking my forehead open. Each time Ava was nearby, watching her expression blank. One morning, she came to breakfast with 3 long scratches down her back, red and raw. "In my sleep," she said when Dad asked her eyes on her plate. That same day, I found another drawing hidden behind her mirror. It was Mom and Dad lying in beds, red circles drawn over their faces like targets. My hands shook as I stuffed it back, praying she wouldn't know I'd seen it. The house grew heavier, the air thick, with that metallic tang. I stopped sleeping properly. My dreams filled with footsteps under the floor, slow and deliberate. Ava stopped being Ava. She'd sit at dinner, pushing food around her fork, scraping the plate in a rhythm that matched the scratches I heard at night. She stared at her reflection in mirrors, windows, even the microwave door, like she was waiting for it to move. One night, I woke to a shadow in the hallway. It was Ava, or something, wearing her shape, standing in her pale nightgown, her mouth open in a silent scream. Her eyes locked on mine, unblinking, and I screamed. She vanished. My parents found her in bed, asleep. But I knew what I'd seen wasn't her. Ava stopped eating entirely. Her cheeks hollowed. Her skin turned gray, but her eyes were sharp. too sharp. She'd stand in the bathroom for hours, staring into the mirror, her lips moving silently. I overheard her, once whispering, "She likes it when I'm quiet." My blood ran cold. Who, I asked, my voice, barely audible. She didn't answer, just smiled a smile that stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. That night, the hallway mirror cracked a spider web of fractures spreading from the center, as if something had punched it from inside. I confronted her in the garage 2 days later, the air thick with the smell of motor oil and dust. "What's wrong with you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. She looked at me, her eyes flat, like I was a stranger. "She's under the house," she said, her voice low. "She talks through the floor when it rains." I laughed, a nervous reflex, but her face didn't change. "I made a trade, Eli, so we could stay here, so things would be okay. But she wants more now." "What did you give her?" I asked, dread pooling in my chest. She smiled again, her teeth glinting. "You'll see." The house felt alive after that, its walls pulsing with a rhythm I couldn't name. I started noticing things, footprints in the dust under my bed, too small to be mine, too narrow to be Ava's. The floorboards in the hallway groaned, even when no one walked. One night, I found a note on my desk, written in Ava's looping handwriting. "She knows your name." I burned it in the sink, the smoke curling like fingers. I didn't tell Mom or Dad. They were already fraying, arguing over bills, ignoring the way Ava's shadow seemed to linger in doorways. The fire came 2 nights later. It started in the kitchen, flames licking the walls before anyone could react. Dad said it was the toaster, but it wasn't plugged in. We stumbled outside, coughing the night air cold against my skin. Ava was the last out, dragged by firefighters, her hands clutching that same drawing, 4 figures 3, burning 1 hole. Her face was calm, her eyes fixed on the flames, as if she'd known they were coming. The house didn't burn down, but it was unlivable. The kitchen charred the air thick with soot. We left Carver a week later, moving to a cramped apartment in Milwaukee. Ava was admitted to a psychiatric facility after she tried to hurt herself, carving lines into her arms with a paper clip. She told the doctors about the girl under the house, how she wasn't finished, how she'd made a deal. They called it trauma delusions, repressed emotions. I didn't believe them. The house was gone, but I felt it still, that presence, watching from somewhere I couldn't see. 7 years passed. I'm in college now, living in a dorm with fluorescent lights and noisy neighbors. I sleep with a nightlight, a habit I can't shake. Ava's still in care, her letters rare, her words clipped. She draws sometimes, they say, but never shows anyone. Last week, a letter arrived. No return address, just 4 words in her handwriting. She hasn't forgotten you. Tucked inside was a drawing. 2 figures, me and something standing just behind its shape, blurred its hands, reaching. I burned it like the note, but the smoke didn't feel clean. Some nights I hear scratches under the floor, faint but unmistakable. The dorm is concrete, no crawl space, no reason for the sound. I check the mirrors before bed, half expecting to see her reflection, not Ava's, but hers, the girl who lives beneath. She's still out there, waiting, and I know deep in my bones that Ava's trade was never finished. Every creak, every shadow reminds me she knows my name, and she's coming for what's hers. Every night, I locked my door, but no lock could keep her out. She was already inside me, waiting. My name is Lena Waller, and in the fall of 2007, when I was 11, my world unraveled in a small house in Lamont, Illinois. After my parents' divorce, Mom, Melissa, and I moved there to start over, a phrase that tasted like ash. The house was a squat 1-story box with creaky floors and a faint, burnt smell that clung to the air. In the backyard, a half-dead tree scratched the windows, its branches like fingers begging to come in. Mom spent her days in the sunroom, smoking, despite her promises, her eyes lost in a haze I couldn't reach. I loved her, but she was a ghost in her own life, and I was too young to pull her back. School was my escape, where I hid behind books, and my friend Tessa, who called me a haunted librarian for my oversized glasses and braces. But home was heavy a weight that pressed harder each night. Mom never spoke much, but when she did, it was about Maya, my sister, born 2 years before me, who died at birth. Maya's in a better place, she'd say, her voice soft, her hands trembling around a glass of red wine. I'd ask about Maya's eyes, her hair, but Mom's answers faded over time, leaving only a name that haunted her. I grew up feeling Maya's shadow, not in the house, but in Mom's silences, her faraway stares. I never thought I'd meet her until that October night, when the world turned upside down. It was a Thursday soup night, when I made chicken noodle with extra carrots for Mom, her ritual for calming anxiety. The weather was vicious, wind howling through the cracks, the windows rattling like they wanted to break free. Mom had been off all day, her eyes glassy, her movements slow, like she was underwater. "I'm fine, Lena," she said when I asked, but her voice was hollow, her gaze fixed on something behind me. By 10 p.m., I crawled into bed, the tree's branches scraping outside a rhythm that lulled me into uneasy sleep. That's when she came. I didn't wake in my room. My feet were bare, sinking into cold, wet mud, surrounded by a forest drowned in fog. Trees loomed their branches, twisted into shapes that didn't belong. Hands, faces, eyes that blinked in the dark. The air smelled of deo sweet and sharp, like flowers left too long in a vase. I called out, my voice swallowed by the mist, and then I heard it. Footsteps slow and deliberate, crunching leaves behind me. I spun around, and there she was, tall, impossibly tall, her skin pale as bone, her brown hair clinging to her face like it was soaked in oil. Her eyes were soft, sad, but a crescent-shaped birthmark on her cheek told me who she was. Maya. I whispered, my heart pounding. She smiled a crooked curve that didn't reach her eyes. "I've missed you, Lena," she said, her voice like wind through broken glass. "Will you have tea with me?" I nodded, drawn to her warmth, a sister I'd never known. She led me through the fog to a clearing where a rusted iron table stood, surrounded by wilted flowers and chairs that sagged as if crushed by time. 2 teacups sat on cracked saucers, steam rising from one, the scent of lemon and honey curling into the air. It was Dad's tea, the kind he made before he left. I sat my hands trembling and sipped. It was warm, familiar, but beneath the sweetness, there was a bitter edge, like poison masked by sugar. "I've been watching you," Maya said, her voice lower now, her eyes unblinking. With her. She meant Mom. Her lips twitched, a grimace replacing her smile. "She doesn't deserve you. She let me die, Lena. She didn't fight for me, but she fought for you." My cup clattered to the table, the tea spilling dark as blood. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking. Maya leaned closer, her breath cold, her eyes now red, bloodshot, wild. "She's not well, Lena. Tomorrow you'll make her soup, like always. But she won't wake up, not unless you let me in." I pushed back the chair, scraping the ground. "Let you in." My voice cracked. Her face twisted, her teeth sharp, jagged, her skin stretching like wax melting. "Let me wear your skin," she hissed, her voice dropping a growl that wasn't human. "Just for a while." The forest pulsed the trees, bending inward, their branches reaching for me. I ran my lungs burning branches, clawing my face. Maya's voice chased me. You took my place. Give it back. Her shape shifted behind me, crawling her limbs too long, her fingers scraping the earth. The fog thickened, her screams echoing. She'll be mine again. I woke, tangled in my blankets, gasping, the clock glowing 5:15 a.m. My room was still, but the air was wrong heavy with that sweet decay smell from the dream. I told myself it wasn't real, just a nightmare born of Mom's stories. But Maya's voice clung to me. Her red eyes burned into my mind. I went to school, sat through math, ate my sandwich, but every step home felt like wading through mud. The tree outside was silent, its branches still watching. At home, I made soup like always, chicken noodle, extra carrots. The phone rang as I stirred Dad's voice sharp on the line. Where's your mom, Lena? In the sunroom, I said, my heart sinking. Go check on her. Now. I found her curled on the floor, unmoving. Her face, pale lips cracked a burnt cigarette beside her. Mom. I shook her, my voice breaking. Nothing. I called Dad back, panic rising, and then she sat up. Her eyes were wrong, glowing with a red glint, her voice a hiss. I'm not going. I froze, the room spinning. She lunged, teeth bared, but the paramedics arrived, their voices a blur. They tried to take her, but she fought her strength, unnatural. Her eyes locked on mine. They let her stay sedated, and I was sent to my aunt's house. That night, I crept past Mom's room. She was asleep, peaceful, her face soft again. The next morning, she was back to normal, smiling over coffee. But I saw it, just for a second, behind her pupils, that red glint, like Maya watching. I didn't tell. Tessa didn't tell anyone. How could I? But the house felt different. The air thicker. The burnt smell stronger. At night, Mom started humming a lullaby, one she'd never sung before, the same one Maya hummed in the forest. It was soft lilting, but it carried a weight like a promise. Weeks passed, then months. I kept my door locked, my windows shut, but the lullaby followed me, seeping through the walls. I'd wake to find my hairbrush, moved strands missing, or my shoes lined up by the door toes, pointing out as if ready to walk. One night, I saw her in the mirror. Not my reflection, but Maya's, her crescent birthmark glowing, her lips moving silently. I smashed the mirror, the glass cutting my hand, but Mom didn't ask why. She just hummed her eyes, distant, her fingers tracing patterns in the air. Years later, I moved out. but the weight never left. I'm 18 now, living in a dorm 2 states away, but I check the locks every night. I don't dream of forests anymore, but I feel her, Maya, her presence like a shadow stitched to mine. Last week, I found a teacup on my desk, chipped with a faint lemon honey smell. No one in the dorm drinks tea. I threw it out, but that night I heard it again, the lullaby, soft, coming from the walls. She's still here, waiting, and I know she'll never let me go. Every night, I see her eyes in the dark, red and hungry, whispering my name, asking for my skin. My sister died for 2 minutes, and when she came back, she brought something with her that's still waiting to claim us all. My name is Ia Harper, and last fall at 24, I thought I knew my siblings better than anyone. I was wrong. Our parents had left for a week-long vacation in Spain, their first in years, and I volunteered to stay home with Ethan, 16, and Rain, 14, in our creaky old house on the edge of town. The place smelled of damp wood and mildew, its walls stained with years of neglect. Rain had always been different. Quiet, artistic sketching skeletons and spiders in her notebooks. But after a car crash the previous year, she wasn't just different. She was wrong. The crash happened when I picked her up from school. A drunk driver ran a red light, smashing into us. I walked away with a concussion and a fractured collarbone. Rain was clinically dead for 2 minutes, her heart still until paramedics brought her back. A miracle, the doctor said. Mom called it God's grace, crying every day as Rain lay in the ICU. But when she came home, her sketches stopped. Her laughter faded, and a faint, rotten smell clung to her room. She'd sleepwalk, muttering her eyes, heavy with shadows. I told myself it was trauma. I lied. That week alone with them started quietly. We ordered pizza. Ethan played Xbox, and Rain stayed in her room. Door closed. I checked on her, once peering through the crack. She sat in the dark, staring at the corner, her eyes wide, unblinking. "You good, Rain?" I asked. She blinked slowly, her voice flat. "Yeah." I shut the door, my stomach twisting, but I brushed it off. She was healing, I told myself. Just give her time. The first night, I woke to a sound at 2:30 a.m. A soft tapping, like fingers on glass. Then a scraping, sharp, and erratic, coming from the ceiling. I sat up, my heart pounding, the room lit only by the faint glow of my phone. The noise wasn't mice, not the heater. It was deliberate, like nails clawing through drywall. I tiptoed into the hallway. Ethan's door shut. Rain's, too. But above me in the attic, something moved, a shadow, long and thin, pressed against the trap door. I blinked, and it was gone, but the air turned cold, sharp, like breathing in a freezer. The next morning, Ethan found me in the kitchen, his face pale. "Something's wrong with Rain," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She was in the kitchen at 4 a.m., crawling in circles on the floor, saying my name. I froze, coffee mug trembling in my hand. Crawling. He nodded, his eyes wide. She was whispering "Ie," like she was talking to someone. It wasn't her voice. I wanted to laugh it off, call it sleepwalking. But the memory of that shadow stopped me. I called my friend Julia, a psychology student, that afternoon. Could it be dissociation? Trauma from the crash? I asked, pacing the living room. Julia hesitated. Maybe, but crawling in circles, whispering names, that's not just trauma, Ia. You'd hear her moving furniture, making noise. Was she silent? I didn't answer. Rain had been silent, too silent, her movements unnatural. Julia's voice dropped. Check on her tonight. Don't let her know you're watching. That evening, I hid a baby monitor behind Rain's bookshelf while she brushed her teeth. She didn't notice her movements slow, her eyes fixed on nothing. At 2:12 a.m., the monitor crackled a wet, deliberate chewing sound filling my room. Then came whispers. Not English, not any language I knew sharp. Guttural, like a chant from somewhere deep. My hands shook as I listened, the words twisting in my chest, pulling me toward her room. I fought the urge to run to her. Julia's warning echoing in my mind. By breakfast, Rain was quiet, picking at her cereal. Do you remember last night? I asked, my voice steady, despite the knot in my throat. She paused, spoon midair. I don't sleep well anymore, she said, her eyes meeting mine, then Ethan's. They're in the walls. My breath caught. Who? Her gaze darkened, her voice barely audible. The ones who want the door opened. She stood and left her cereal untouched, the air heavy with her words. That night, Ethan screamed. I bolted to his room, finding deep gouges in his door, like claw marks from something sharp. He was inside, sobbing, curled on his bed. Rain was here, he stammered. She tried to open the door with her teeth. I ran to Rain's room, but she wasn't there. The window was open, cold air pouring in. I grabbed a flashlight and found her outside, barefoot in the snow, arms raised to the sky, her mouth smeared with blood. Her eyes were empty, reflecting the moonlight like glass. I didn't sleep, sitting by Ethan's door, with a baseball bat, every sound making my skin crawl. The next night, I set up old GoPro cameras from my college days, one in Rain's room, one in the hallway, one in the kitchen. She didn't speak all day, her face blank, her hands twitching like they were counting something unseen. At 1:44 a.m., a knock came at my door. "Can I sleep with you tonight?" Rain asked, her voice small. I nodded, my throat tight, and let her curl up at the edge of my bed. I lay awake, watching her, her chest rising and falling, but her eyes never closed. By morning, she was gone. I checked her room empty, Ethan's room untouched. The kitchen back door was open, the air icy. I stepped outside, my breath catching. Rain lay in the grass, eyes open, face pale blood dried on her hands. "It's quiet now," she whispered, her voice hollow. "The house is quiet inside." I rushed her to the hospital, her fever spiking to 104 degrees. Doctors called it meningitis, possibly triggered by the crash, and sedated her. Mom and Dad flew back the next day, their faces etched with guilt. The hospital kept Rain for weeks. Ethan refused to talk about that week, his eyes darting to corners like he saw something I didn't. The doctors diagnosed Rain with trauma-induced dissociative psychosis, blaming her behavior on the crash. But I knew better. The GoPro footage was gone, deleted somehow, except for one frame from the hallway camera, Rain crawling backward on all fours, her mouth moving, and behind her, a tall, thin shape with hollow eyes, its limbs twisting like smoke. I deleted it, my hands shaking, but I see it every time I close my eyes. We don't live in that house anymore. I'm in a new apartment, far from that creaky old place. But Rain's words haunt me. "The door is still there," she mumbled in her sleep one night. Months later, her eyes shut, her voice not her own. "Someday, I'll open it again, for all of us." I see her in my dreams, not Rain, but the thing that came back with her tall and hollow, whispering my name. The lights flicker, sometimes, no reason, no pattern, and I know it's here, waiting for the door to open.